Guam, the territory where bestiality laws made history. In 2011, a man killed a dog on the island of Guam and was acquitted, not for lack of evidence, but because the death had been too quick to constitute suffering. This shocking verdict triggered a legislative revolution, but it concealed an even more disturbing secret. Up until that date, zoophilia on Guam was not technically a prosecutable crime. A legal paradox that made this remote American territory in the Pacific the unwitting protagonist of one of the most controversial cases in modern jurisprudence. The island forgotten by America. Imagine a strip of land of just 540 square kilometers, lost in the vastness of the Pacific Ocean. Guam floats 3,800 kilometers from the Philippines and over 6,000 from the American coast, a tropical speck where 170,000 people live in a unique political limbo. Its inhabitants are American citizens, but they cannot vote for president. They have a representative in Congress, but without voting rights. They live under the stars and stripes, but breathe the soul of the Chamorro people, guardians of millennial traditions that blend with local Keligan and American barbecues. Here, where typhoons dance between June and November, one of the most jarring contradictions of modern jurisprudence was taking place, a territory that in 2015 legalized gay marriage before many American states, but that until 2011 could not clearly define what was legal or illegal in sexual relations between humans and animals. The case that revealed the legal abyss. The story begins with a trial that seemed simple. A man had killed a dog, an incontrovertible fact. But when the case reached court, the judges discovered that Guam's laws were so vague as to make conviction impossible. The dog had died too quickly to prove evident suffering. Acquittal was inevitable. But this absurd verdict revealed a much deeper and more embarrassing problem. If quickly killing a dog wasn't prosecutable, what happened with other acts? Legal experts began digging into the territorial penal code, and what they found left them speechless. The incomplete revolution of the Pause Act. March 2011. Guam's Territorial Congress passes the Pause Act, a revolutionary law that establishes mandatory care standards and draconian penalties up to $10,000 in fines and 20 years in prison for severe cruelty to animals. The Animal Legal Defense Fund celebrates. Guam becomes one of the territories with the most advanced laws against animal abuse in the United States. But there's a detail that escapes many. Hidden in the folds of the penal code, the Pause Act does not explicitly mention sex with animals. Animal Wellness Action defines the law as one of the best anti-cruelty laws in the USA, but highlights a disturbing problem. The lack of specific reference to zoophilia represents a serious gap. The hidden taboo. Is it legal to have sex with animals? Here we are at the heart of the paradox that made legal experts tremble. While Guam definitively banned cockfighting and severely punished those who denied food to a dog, bestiality, sex between humans and animals, floated in a legal gray area that no one dared to address openly. Technically, until 2011, zoophilia was not explicitly punished by territorial laws. Being a federal U.S. territory, Guam should be subject to federal laws that consider sex with animals a crime. But local enforcement required that territorial legislation incorporate these prohibitions in a crystal-clear manner. The result? A Kafkaesque situation where if the animal did not suffer evident injuries during the sexual act, the case might not be prosecutable. Bestiality was relegated to a generic definition of prohibited sexual behavior in the Public Indecency Code without specific penalties, without procedural clarity. In American territory where you could get 20 years for mistreating a dog, but where zoophilia existed in a legal limbo that embarrassed even the most progressive legislators. The uncomfortable truth no one wanted to admit. The situation was surreal and paradoxical. On one hand, Guam had made giant strides in civil rights, gay marriage legalized, cutting-edge animal protection, infrastructure modernization. On the other, there existed this legislative black hole that made legal experts turn pale. If the judge interpreted the act as generic indecency rather than abuse, the penalties changed drastically. If the animal showed no signs of physical injury, prosecutability became uncertain, an ambiguity that made both law enforcement action and deterrence difficult. Animal rights activists were furious. How was it possible that a territory that boasted having one of the best anti-cruelty laws in the USA could not clarify one of humanity's most universal taboos? The partial resolution of the paradox. Today, the situation is technically resolved, but not without compromises. Sexuality with animals on Guam is considered illegal, but is still prosecuted as a generic form of abuse or sexual indecency, not as a specific and distinct crime. Local authorities now have tools to prosecute cases of sexual abuse of animals, but much of the enforcement depends on the interpretation of individual magistrates. Is it abuse? Is it extreme pornography? Is it public indecency? The line often remains blurred. The penalties are nonetheless severe: incarceration, fines up to $10,000 or more, registration as a criminal, and mandatory psychological treatment. Measures that not only protect animals, but recognize the scientifically proven correlation between animal cruelty and human violence. The legacy of a silent revolution. Guam's story is more than a curious footnote in American jurisprudence. It's proof that even the most remote tropical paradises can become battlegrounds for the most fundamental rights, and that the most embarrassing legal gaps can transform into epical reforms. From that absurd 2011 trial came one of the world's most advanced legislations on animal protection. But the real lesson is that civil progress often proceeds through paradoxes. An island that legalizes gay marriage before continental America, but struggles to define the illegality of sex with animals. Because sometimes, to change the world, it's enough for a dog to die too quickly, and for someone to have the courage to look into the most uncomfortable abysses of the law. And you, from which country are you watching this video? What do you think of this incredible story from Guam? Did you already know about these legal paradoxes, or did they surprise you as much as they surprised me? Write me your opinion in the comments. I'm really curious to know what you think. And if this story intrigued you, take a look at one of the suggested videos here on the screen. You'll find other equally absurd stories from the world of international law that will leave you speechless.